So anyway, so here's who I am. Are we good with the sound so that we're getting, okay, good, excellent. And so welcome to all those who are watching on video at some point. Just real quick, a little bit about who I am, and we'll dig into some of this stuff. I really want today to be a working day, but just so you know who I am, married, my wife and I have been married for about 22 years. I'm born and raised in Chicago. I'm a Chicago boy, but I married a cheesehead, and so now I live behind the cheddar curtain because even Jonah had to go to Nineveh. So this Bears fan now lives, and I used to work for the Diocese of Green Bay, and my office overlooked the fatted calf known as Lambeau Field. And so I've done my punishment in purgatory, but nevertheless, I live up there. I joke it's actually a wonderful place to raise a family, fantastic schools and community. And I have two boys. I have a freshman at the University of St. Thomas up in the Twin Cities. He's the one in the suit that was on his confirmation day. And then the one in the purple, my baby, who's not at all a baby, 6'3", 240. Sean is a junior in high school. And so we actually last week were doing college visits with our junior to finish up. So I have dual citizenship. I'm a citizen of Ireland and America, which actually serves no purpose other than it's a great story to tell. And I have a passport that I almost never use. And so avid fisherman, and I love golf. I don't get to play it as much as I want. They always seem to be charity events, but that's okay. It's a good cause. And I am from Chicago. I grew up playing hockey my entire life. I started when I was 3. That's how I got into college. I went on a scholarship in Minnesota to play hockey and had an accident that left me paralyzed my sophomore year of college and ended my hockey career. But it's been fun to be an avid hockey guy, and I know a lot of the folks that have gone through the NHL, and so I've lived vicariously my career through them. But 3 years ago, I ran the Chicago Marathon, my first marathon ever, and completed the Chicago Marathon. And so it was 21 years after being paralyzed. And so for me, that's a highlight and a high point. But that's who I am. Just a normal dude, and then I did write that book. That book that's in front of you, that is your copy to have and hopefully enjoy. I wrote for last July when the bishops gathered at the convocation down in Orlando to gather the national church, and so I was asked to do a workshop with a couple of the bishops on the current state of the church in America. And so I wrote a little book for that. It's only like 70 pages or so, real easy read. So hopefully you enjoy that copy. If you need more, just let me know. We can take care of that for you. Here's my hope for today. We'll go any direction you really want. I've sat through, look, I don't know what your motivation is to come here, and maybe it was the chicken and the potatoes and the free corn, which is fine. I don't take any offense to it. But I do a lot of these, right? I've sat through a lot of these. 30 years of ministry, you go to a lot of workshops, and everybody's got the answer to everything, right? And everybody's got the slickest little PowerPoints, and everybody's got the slickest little logo, and if it's the shiny penny is what I call it. We're always chasing the shiny penny, right? The reality is there is no shiny penny. What I'm going to offer to you today actually has nothing to do with programs. In fact, my bias will come out very quickly. I think that's been the problem. We've been looking for a programmatic solution to a systematic problem. Because I'm Irish, that means two things. When you're Irish, you're always right, or at least they think they're right. And number two, we're very blunt about things. We have very limited filters. And so we'll throw some things out there. But the reality is, my hope is that today's a dialogue. Look, the bald guy doesn't have every answer. Yes, I do this. Yes, I travel all over. Yes, it's true that our ministry has been able to help parishes regrow again, and in about 12 months we can get them up by double digits. And that includes enrollments in schools, enrollments in religious ed. Yeah, that's all true. But the reality is it's not Rich that's doing it. The reality is that we're helping people to think and behave differently, using the church as the guide instead of looking for the shiny penny to solve our problems. And so that's what we're going to dialogue a little bit about today. And there's a lot of wisdom in this room. And the local experience matters. In July, down at the bishop's convocation when I was there, and look, I'm in full agreement with everything that happened there. Pat Lencioni, major speaker, he does a lot of the same things I do, the amazing parish, and it's amazing, it's fantastic. But Pat and we share the same brain. He's better looking and has more money than I do. But Pat and I share the same brain, but there's one thing we would differ on, and this is just between us, is that I don't believe going to a conference, getting information, and coming back is going to change our parishes. Why? Because I've been that keynoter and nothing changes. It's why I stopped being that keynoter. I think that the difference between what we're doing is that we actually come on site and change, and there's a reason why. Because it's about behavioral change, not telling someone what they should do. And so that's why we're coaches. And so coaches walk with the journey. But the reality is that each one of you have a different experience. For me to stand up here and say there's one size fit, here, just do this and you'll be great. Come on, we've been doing that for 40, 50 years. It doesn't work, right? We have to think differently. We have to behave differently. And so what I hope to offer, knowing I have a brother who's a Dominican priest, he went to SLU and is now in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And I tell Brendan all the time, I said, Brendan, stop beating yourself up as a pastor. First of all, you didn't learn some of this stuff. Nobody taught you the organizational strategy side of scaling and multiplying ministry. And I said, so cut yourself some slack. Stop beating yourself up, right? And I said, let me help you, and we'll show you how to do this. This is what I do. You studied your thing. I studied my thing, and I've been in church my whole life. But the reality is we've had some success with it. And we'll talk about that, by the way, as we go. And then one thing I really want to do, and we're going to work it in one way or the other before I leave here, is I want you to practice something. I have some tools. I want you to practice it here so that you literally, Tuesday, we all know you're taking off on Monday, Tuesday, you can begin to implement this with your teams. Even if your team is all volunteer because you're in a place that doesn't have a paid team. You can do this Tuesday, okay? But I want you to practice it here to build your confidence, okay? Does that make sense? Does that sound like a fair? And if we have to go take a detour somewhere, we'll take a detour. That's fine, right? Delta already gave me one today anyway, so. Bishop, I happen to notice you in the back. We've never met, but you know, the chain gives you away, so. But I understand you're busy, you're jumping in and out. Do you want to say hi? Did you want to?
Hello, and I'm very grateful for everybody for showing up. I do appreciate you taking the time to be here for this important topic, the evangelization of our youth. So, thank you all.
Excellent, and thanks for being here. Thanks for popping in, and so hopefully you can stay as long as you can. And then later this weekend, Doug Tuke is coming. I know Doug very, very well, does an outstanding job. He's actually in New Jersey right now at the same conference I was supposed to be at, and I sent one of my team to it. About rural ministry. So Doug will be great. So let's go through a couple things. Let's just talk, make sure we're all on the same page. We're not going to dig into all the stats and everything. We're going to do it just a little bit to set the groundwork. But then let's get into what is the reality of parish life like, and why, to me the more important, why are we not producing the fruit that we should be producing? Meaning discipleship, right? It's not because we're not doing stuff. It's not because we're not budgeting for stuff. It's not because we don't have people who don't care. We have all that, but we're not producing the harvest that we want. And so the important question is why? Real quick as a set of overview. You probably know this, especially if you've been around for a while. You know that roughly coming out of, in the beginning of the 70s, we were ballpark just a hair under 50% attending Mass weekly. This is not... You had 100% registered in your parish, but only roughly half of those people in the early 70s were coming every single week, right? These are all CARA's numbers. You can look all this stuff up. And by 2012, it was roughly a quarter. Some studies say 25, some say 24. Either way, we're roughly a quarter of the population in your parish. So if you're at St. Mary's Parish, of the 100% of people that are registered, only 25-ish% in 2012 were coming every single week. You probably know this because that's what you're looking out on. 2016, it had already dropped to 21%, and I'm waiting to get the official numbers from 2017, that when you do the numbers in October, when they collect them, my understanding is it's down to 20% now. We're losing ballpark roughly 1% a year, right? Which gives us a lifespan of not much, right? Unless we change things. Now, I don't say that as doom and gloom because I've read the book. I know who wins, so I'm not worried about that. I just know we gotta change some things before we're in desperation mode. Now, here's why I show you that. Because I wanna show something to you. I'm a teacher by background. I have a master's in education. So teachers are all about application-based learning, right? Or you should be. So let me. How many do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 14, 16 out in the skybox, 18, 20, 22, 4, 6, 8, 32, 4, 6, 8, rough. Okay, so we're almost at 40. Awesome, excellent. This helps me. So if keep chewing, but if you hold on 1 second, here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask, for the sake of time, let's have 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to keep everybody in the back, everybody over here, and the last 2 rows seated. And I'm going to ask these 4 rows and this whole side to stand up. I want to show you something. You're not the chosen ones. It's okay. But if it's going to make you feel any better, neither is Bishop. So in 1974, let's go call ourselves Mary, right? We always got to have a Mary and a Joseph. So we're at St. Mary's Church. In 1974, everybody in this room is registered at St. Mary's Church. But only you who are standing are the ones that are attending every week. Okay? For context. Now, here's what's important. All of you who are seated are still members of St. Mary's Church, correct? And for whatever reason, and they're varied, but for whatever reason, you have asked to not be taken off the registration list. Now, we don't always know why that is, but we keep mailing things, and some parishes have chosen to purge those names, which I'm going to argue is a very wrong thing to do, and I'll explain in a second why. But nevertheless, you're still on the mailing list. You could have called St. Mary's Church and say, I'm done, I'm not attending anymore, take me off the list. But you didn't. Right? You're the ones in 1974, you're doing all the parish ministry and you're doing all the activities, and we know that there's just a small percentage, you're volunteering for everything, right? And you're funding. You are funding everybody, correct? By 2012, we're going to drop to roughly, ballpark, 25%. So let's have you 4 sit down, and let's have the back row sit down, standing. Would we? I'm not counting in numbers. Do we agree this is ballpark 25%? If one of you are that type A person, I just had a bad thought about you. Good room to have it in, though. So anyway, by 2012. This is what's happened. You're all still registered on the books. You're all still asking, God's mad at me now, thanks. You're all still asking to stay on the books. But what's happened is this, and this is where you're really going to recognize this. Now you're funding everybody, and you want them to help you because, quite frankly, you're getting tired and you're running out of money and funds, correct? And then by 2016, let's have another row sit down. We're at ballpark 21-ish%. We could technically probably have another row sit down, but we won't get that technical. Now, we're here, right? Would we be in agreement that this represents now St. Mary's Church? Or at least the actives of St. Mary's Church? Right. Now, here's the key. When we talk about why we're struggling, I want you to understand this before we move on any further. When we get together and we have these town hall meetings or these pastoral planning meetings, right? And you've gone to hundreds of them, I've done hundreds of them. It's the same model, right? No matter where I go, I don't even need to be at church, and I know how we pretty much do this all over the country, right? So we get everyone together, we need to do a 5-year pastoral plan. So you are going to announce at your masses, and we're going to have this. It's on Thursday night. You really got to be. It's really, really important. We want everybody to be here. It's super important that you be here, and we're going to announce it 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance, right? We're going to put it in the bulletin because that's the most amazing communication tool possible. We're going to put it in there, and we're going to tell everyone you got to be there. We're going to build this thing up. This is going to be an unbelievable day. We're going to get those people. Now, first of all, we're St. Mary's Parish. Who's going to that meeting? They are. Why? Because it was announced at Mass, right? That's step 1 to understand something, right? Now, when we get together, we're going to put ourselves in a room. It's usually going to happen one of 2 ways. Sometimes we have little pieces of paper that we ask people to fill out. Other times you have like newsprint or dry erase board or whatever, right? But you're going to ask 3 questions. It happens all the time. And the first thing, because you have to start positive. We've been trained in the Catholic Church to do this. What do we do really well, right? Because you got to be positive. You have to. And so we're going to write down all those things. Well, I have no idea what you're going to talk about at your parish, but I'll tell you what's going to be on your list. The first thing that's going to happen, especially if the pastor's in the room, is that, oh, Father, you're amazing, right? If you're in the room, that's going to come up on the list, right? Here's the other two things. Every parish is going to show up on your list. We are so welcoming. We welcome everybody. We're so friendly. We hug everyone. We're just so friendly. It's unbelievable. Second thing is that we're so generous. We are a generous community. We give everything away. There's a guy without a shirt. Go take off yours and go give it to him, right? And we're so generous. And obviously, I'm taking it to the extreme now, right? And that does not mean that we're generous. But hold that thought on what those two are really saying. We'll come up with things like if we have a good Catholic school, Catholic school usually shows up on the list. Now, not everyone has a Catholic school, but if you have a Catholic school, that usually shows up on the list. And then every parish has a thing, and I don't know what your thing is. Some parishes really pride themselves on being a social justice parish. Other parishes really pride themselves on a fish fry. Whatever your thing is, it's going to show up on that list. Then you're going to have a second list. And the second list is going to be, well, what do we think really needs to be improved? And here's what's going to show up on that list. We need more young people. We need more money. We need more families. And we need more volunteers. And I don't know which order, but those four are showing up on that list. Right? And if Father's not in the room, he could show up on that list. As could the liturgist and the choir. Right? But if there's choir people in the room, they're going to show up on what we like. Because we're never going to say what we really think in a public forum like that, right? And then there's always something in there, usually sacramental things about how many people are confirmed and then leave shows up on that list, or some variation of it. And then again, every parish has got a thing. The parking lot we've been trying to pave for 10 years, we got to get that done. Because if we had a paved parking lot, everybody would be coming, right? And so whatever it is, and every parish has got a thing. And then the third list is going to be, they're going to say something along the lines of, well, we can't do everything, so we're going to have to set some priorities for the next 5 years. So what should our priorities going to be? And everyone's going to look back. And you know what's going to be your top priorities? We need more kids, we need more money, we need more volunteers, and we need more parents. Accurate or inaccurate? And what I love to do for fun when I get in those parishes, I say, can I see your 5-year plan from 5 years ago? What was on the list 5 years ago? Same stuff. We need more kids, we need more money. Now, did they not accomplish it because they weren't trying? No. Well, did they not accomplish it because they didn't care enough? No. If you don't understand why it didn't work in the first place, how can you ever find a solution to it? So let's pause before we get into some of the nuts and bolts to understand this form. This format sounds familiar to people. I don't know what you do in your diocese. I deliberately didn't ask because I didn't want to bias it. When we gathered, who showed up at that meeting? They did, right? Because it was announced at a place where they did. Now, when we gathered and we said, what do we do really well? How did this group interpret that question? How do all human beings interpret that question? What I like. Because all human beings want more of what they like. So when you ask the question in that forum of what we do well, the natural human behavior, it's got nothing to do with them being bad people. That's not what's going on here. The natural human reaction, psychologically, is to answer that question, what do I like? Because what I like, I want more of, and therefore we do well. I'm drawn to it. Now, what they like, is that necessarily what all of you like? What you think you do well, is that what all of you think? If we would ask this group the same 3 questions, would we get the same answers? Does this group think that we could grow St. Mary's Church if we would give you more money to do what you like? Sure. You could be Irish. You got some Blarney in you. Do you see what I mean? And it's not that this group is bad, ill-willed or bad intended. That's not what's happening. It's the forum and it's the way that you ask the question. You reap what you sow. When you ask a question that way, you get the answer accordingly. And when you say what we don't do well, what people interpret is what these bad people need to do to give us more of what we want? Because God knows that what we need to improve is not us, it's them. If they would volunteer, if they would give us more money, if those kids would come, we'd be fine. Now, in this room, I can make this comment because you all understand that. In family counseling, when you have a husband and wife that are arguing in their marriage, and one side is blaming the other, can there ever be healing? No. True reconciliation happens at the intersection where blame ends. But as long as our behavior is to do it this way, without ever realizing it. Here's what I say. My own parish, by the way, did the same format. They had a little bit different individual sheets of paper. Basically, it was the same 3 questions. And I said, Father, don't ask, you guys can sit down. We're done picking on you for now. I said, Father, don't ask me for my opinion. I'll come because you asked me to come, but I don't need that because I know what's going to happen if I make comments because of what I do. And I said, I'm not going there. And afterwards he said, well, what did you think? Yeah, it was really awesome. You got great. And I said, Father, respectfully, and you came here, but you asked me, so I'm going to give you my truthful answer. I think it was a terrible night. Why? And I said, because you forgot the most important question. Oh, what's that? What was the most important? Oh, if there was a 4th one, we should have asked it. I said, no. Father, you're not even understanding what I'm talking about. You missed the most important question. He said, what's that? I said, I don't care what our parishioners want. That's the problem. It doesn't matter what we want. It matters what the church wants. And nowhere did you ever ask or say, here's what the church has been asking us to do. Let's measure up against that. See, when you ask people what they like, unintentionally you make the church into your own image and likeness. Thus the consumer model. We never started, in fact, it's never asked. Here's what the church has been asking us to do. How do we think we do against that? Now that would be a better question to have at one of those 5-year planning meetings, wouldn't it? Because it eliminates everybody who thinks they know what they want, and if the church would be great if we would just do it my way, right? It doesn't matter. It's not about us. And in this room, you all know it, so I don't need to spend time explaining it. All these documents of the church are divinely inspired. If they're divinely inspired, it means that the Lord is trying to communicate to His church. Maybe we should pay attention to it, and maybe we should dig into those things. Look at what the wisdom of the Spirit has been trying to teach us, because God desires that we win and succeed. And so if we can do that, what would change in our ministries and programs? And it's not that we don't care about the people. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they cannot be the priority over the wisdom of the church. Otherwise, we're just trying to please them. And I'm pretty sure the Lord spoke out against that, didn't He? Why are we stuck? Because sometimes it's so obviously right in front of us that we miss it. When you look at these numbers, they're justified by behavior. Here's sobering numbers. Okay, I threw that one in there. You know some of these. Here, the bottom one's what's fascinating to me. Do you know that 42% of weekly Mass-going attendees, Kara, the research arm at Georgetown, told us this. 42% of weekly Mass-going, these are the good families. These are this group over here. Do you know that only 42% of them are sending their kids to either Catholic school or religious education? Nationally? Now this group I would understand, right? But when this group isn't even sending them, that's a real problem, isn't it? Right? Here's why. Tell me if this looks like your church, not the picture. We have staff. Now, obviously, sometimes we have paid, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're volunteer. That's totally dependent upon where you are. But everybody's got an area focused, right? The catechetical leader takes care of the catechetics. We got, if you have a youth minister, the youth ministry, deacon does deacon, right? Everyone's got their job. Business manager tracks the numbers in their office with the door closed or whatever. But anyway, the budget comes from the Sunday offertory primarily, because where else would it come from, right? Duh. Religious education covers youth education. Yeah, sure, we'll do some family events and we're trying to work on the parents. But let's be honest, our real focus is on the kids, right? Put that in the back of your head. Youth minister's job is to get kids fired up. I have no idea what that means, and I'm fairly sure that's a Virtus violation, but nevertheless. The youth minister's job is to get them all fired up and get them all, come on, love Jesus, love Jesus. Now, whether you actually have a relationship with his church is a different issue, but what we're really doing is we have a lot of youth ministers. I say this as someone who spent time in youth ministry, therefore I've earned the right to pick on our youth ministers. But the reality is many of our youth ministers are leading kids to themselves, not to the church. And I don't mean that to be angry. That's just a reality. It's personality-driven ministry. It has nothing to do with discipleship of the Lord. Business manager's job is to track the money, and that's their job. Well, what else would they do? They work on spreadsheets, right? Isn't that their job? We'll come back to that too. We're going to hold a volunteer fair, stewardship fair, discipleship fair, whatever you call it in your place. But basically, this is where we're going to get the volunteers. We're going to do it once a month. We're all going to set up our little tables. Lots of parishes like tables, right? And everybody can set up their little booth and sign people up so that about 30% of those people cannot get called back, or at least say that they didn't get called back. And then when we, as pastoral leaders and with our staffs, if you have a staff, are going to say, well, we keep telling them you got to follow up with people, and we don't do anything, and nobody holds anybody accountable to that, right? We'll come back to that one. Same people are doing 90% of the work. Social events are filling up our calendar. We just came through Lent. How many of you had a fish fry during Lent? See, in Wisconsin, that's actually not Lent. It's called Friday. But either way, we have picnics, we have festivals, and there has to be a raffle in at least a couple of those, right? Because the whole purpose is to get money, right? Maybe. We'll get back to that. The pastor is frazzled, the staff is overwhelmed. If any of you, and I presume there are several of you in this room, you have more than one parish, and some of you may have 2, 3, 4 parishes. That's statistically the norm in the United States now. You're tired. Look, man, all I'm doing is chasing, right? And the staff are the same way. And here's what the worst for you, and this is what I tell my brother's a pastor as well, and I say, Brennan, here's why I feel even worse for you, and I feel for all of you who are the pastoral leaders and the heads of your churches. The staff still want the staff meetings and everything to be the exact same schedule, because they're not the ones who are going to all these other churches, you are. And it's not that they want you to die, it's just they want their comfort and convenience of a Tuesday meeting at 10 o'clock when we always have it, right? And they don't think about the wear and tear of you, and that's a problem, right? Not to mention the fact, do we really still all have to have separate staff meetings? And by the way, when we have a staff meeting, are we actually producing anything, right? Because most of our staff meetings are actually painful and uninspiring. So another bias is going to come out here. Most staff meetings in parishes, my experience, are absolutely horrible. Just horrible. And they're a total waste of time. Most of the time, it's people going around a circle talking about what's on their calendar, and half of the people sitting in the circle aren't even paying attention to what you're talking about in the first place. And by the way, that's not just staff meetings. That happens in a lot of pastoral council and finance council meetings too, right? Nobody ever talks about the mission and the multiplication. How are we? We're going to grow 3%. Where are we at with that? And are we doing that? And are we holding each other accountable to that? We never have that conversation. We talk about the event that's coming up. That's not a staff meeting. And if there's no visioning going on, if there's no accountability going on, it's really not a meeting, it's a check-in, right? And we want to know why our parishes aren't growing. Well, we're not having the conversations to make them grow. But in general, they're uninspiring, especially if you happen to be one of those pastors who are going from parish to parish and you're just coming in the door, you put your stuff down, you got to get over to a staff meeting, listen to people yak about everything that's wrong and why you don't preach the way that you preach, and then go on to the next meeting. And if that's the way you're living your life, man, that's a rat race. And how do we grow a church in that? Our budgets are down, our calendars are not changing very much from year to year. And as was pointed out, the young people, they're not coming. They're not interested, and their families are not coming. A couple of weeks ago, I was invited to Baltimore. I was a part of this study that St. Mary's Press released. You may or may not have heard of it, called Going, Going, Gone. How many of you have heard about this study? So St. Mary's Press released this, I want to say it was the beginning of March, end of February. I can't remember when I was in Baltimore, but either way, they've been studying for 2 years. This was a pretty in-depth study of what is happening with our young people. And here was just what they released, and it's in this little book that you can get from St. Mary's Press. That the majority are leaving before the age of 21. Here's the thing that should bother you. The average age that they are self-describing. Now that does not mean when they're 13, they're saying, I'm done. People who are claiming to be unaffiliated with the church, meaning I don't want anything to do with the church anymore. It's completely irrelevant to me. When they look back, they say that the age that I really was convicted has nothing to offer me was the age of 13. Okay? Just so you know, that's what they're talking about. About half are becoming nuns, which means when the next survey comes out of 2020, the U.S. Census, and it asks what religion are you, half of them say that they're going to check the box, I have no official religious affiliation. Of those who have left, the other half are switching to some other religion. What we know statistically is that they're actually switching to a lot of religions. They're really actively church shopping. We also know that the average person, before they leave the church, the average young adult, is going to 3 different Catholic churches before they leave because they don't want to leave. That's statistically significant. Remember the people who are sitting down here? They don't want to leave. That's important. That's hugely important. That's the hope, by the way. I give you all these numbers and it's sobering. No. You got to know how to look through those numbers. That's the hope. They don't want to leave. They're leaving reluctantly. You can see the age breakdown. You can see as they get older, lots of numbers. Catholics are the largest. Now, I tell people don't read too much into it because we're also the largest denomination. So, of course, statistically, we're going to lose the most people because we have the most people, right? The other thing is when they ask why, the age of 13, and this nun thing is fascinating. Now, you'll read in here, and you've read maybe in some other studies, there's an interesting thing going on in America, but which, by the way, is not just the Catholic Church. It's actually not even religion. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not. There's what they're calling new atheism. It's termed in this study, and a couple other researchers have talked about this. The new atheism is, these nuns are really not nuns. They're calling themselves nuns, but they're really not nuns. What's happening is that they still believe in the existence of some God. But the way we formed them, and many other denominations, but Catholics in particular, where is the source? Where is God? Don't think like someone who's theologically trained. Think like a 13-year-old. Where is God in their mind? Where do we teach them God is? Up there. God is fully... No. In their mind, God is fully present where? What do we teach them? In everyone, in the Eucharist. And the Eucharist is a thing in their mind. And so if I'm leaving the church, I'm leaving God in their mind. But they're really not leaving God. But they don't have a language now to say that. Because when they reject what they think it means to be Catholic, they no longer have a language to explain what it is that they really believe. Thus, what they're calling the new atheism. But the reality is a lot of these nuns would absolutely come back. In Baltimore, when we released the study, it was a 3-day conference. We invited many of the participants that were in this study, and they came. And there was dialogue in the course of the 3 days over, just tell me about, like, why did you leave and what was it? And everybody's story, of course, is different. But when the panelists asked, is there anything that would make you come back? Nearly every one of them said yes. See, again, I know the numbers are painful, and to be down to 20%, but why do I make a comment like, I've read the book, I know who wins, if we just change behavior? They're really not leaving. Don't believe the media. They just don't know that in the church is the place and the source for truth of life. Now that gets back to how we form them, doesn't it? And their families, doesn't it? Right? But there's also hope in that. That's the hope in all of this. So let's dig a little bit before we start having some dialogue on this. Let's look at our current catechetical model in America. I wrote my graduate thesis on this. The top line is faith development. There's 1,000 theorists out there. We're not going to go back to school. You've probably studied this 100 times over. But you know there's a basic, most of them are in agreement whether they have 5 or 6 levels, whatever. For the most part, they all say it's the same 5 stages people go through, right? The first thing is I got to trust. This, by the way, has nothing to do with religion. It's just life in general. Someone's going to sell you insurance. I'm not even talking to you until I've gained some level of trust with you, right? And which is why they name drop. Oh, Mark told me to call you. Well, the reason they do that is because they're slowly trying to build trust. Okay? It's the same thing. This is all of life. Eventually, as I scope you out, are you credible or not? There's a little curiosity. I might ask you a question, and I'm still going to hold back a little bit. I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'll toss out a question. I want to see how you answer this, right? Basically, I'm scouting you, right? This is an interview, and I want to know, are you legit? And then if you are, and you stay in contact with me, and we slowly build up a little rapport, I'll eventually come a little bit more, and I'll start to ask more questions. And then it'll open up into a little bit more of a dialogue before I jump in full force, right? That's with all of life. Well, our catechetical documents have spoken for years and years and years that the baptismal catechumenate is the model that all formation should follow. It's right in the documents. It's not the bald guy's opinion. It is the model that all formation should follow. All formation of all ages should follow the baptismal catechumenate model. What is the baptismal catechumenate model? It begins with the period of inquiry, does it not? Which actually begins before they've ever stepped foot in your church. Right? It's usually the co-workers talking to each other just about, I went to church on Sunday, and I don't know how long that could take. It could take 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. And slowly we start asking some questions, and slowly we start, now the church would call that apprenticing. We're going to apprentice them slowly and walk the journey with them. And there's a couple stopping points in the form of what we call rites, obviously. Again, I'm not spending time on this, you all know this. But, and I do like to point out, the last stage is not just in theory, right? I mean, we are supposed to actually be doing that stage. It's kind of an important stage. It's, now let's help you discern where to use your gifts and talents in the parish. Not, good luck and hopefully you'll start sending back that envelope. Right? That's not, and by the way, that's for confirmation students as well. We don't do that either, right? Traditional formation is we baptize them. We actually do nothing until age 4 or 5, if you have a pre-K program or whatever, every parish is a little bit different. But we actually do nothing post-baptism. We do nothing for their families, typically. And then we send them a letter to invite them back after we have abandoned them for a few years. Right? We send them, and then we come, and what's the first thing we're going to do? Get them in and start teaching them. We skip over the period of inquiry, which the church has been telling us for years is the most important phase. And it's not even in our model of formation currently, which, by the way, was designed in the early 1900s. Our current catechetical model was designed in the early 1900s. When the boys at the time were coming back from Europe with behaviors that were not becoming of a Catholic. And that's where the whole CCD model and the Bishop of Peoria, I'm going to give you the whole catechetical backstory here, but it was all designed. And we didn't need to worry about some of these externals because we lived in a culture that was Christian. Sunday was church day. What else would it be? Right? Of course you're going to put a creche out at Christmas. What else would you put out there? Right? Of course we're singing Christmas carols about Jesus. What do you think Christmas is about? We don't live in that world anymore. And we haven't adapted to that, and we haven't adapted our formation model. We put them in, and it's all content driven. And we wonder why there's no application. We call application mandated service hours before you get confirmed. And now they treat that as an assignment, not a way of life. And we never apprentice them all along the way. Why do I say, stop pointing fingers, let's look at what we're doing. They're sitting here saying, I don't want to go. What if we would just change some of the ways we're doing some things and to bring them back? And our own church has been telling us the roadmap. That's the best part. That's the hope. We have the roadmap. It's in the documents. Here's what I'd like us to do, have a little dialogue, just 2, 3 right around you. Because we have to make this personal. Think about that person. It doesn't necessarily have to be a young person, because the reality is there's a lot of grown-ups that leave the church too. But somebody who's saying, I'm done being Catholic, I'm not coming around anymore. And first of all, get somebody in your head. Put their name in your head. Does everybody have somebody? I always love asking this question. And only one other time I've asked it in a room full of predominant clergy. So you're a science experiment right now. How many of you, that person is somebody you're related to? Isn't that fascinating? And you're pretty normal. That's the majority when I do this with people that they can think of somebody that they're immediately related to. Just one or two people right around you. What are some factors, experiences, events, I don't know what it is, that may have led to their disaffiliation? They're saying, I'm done. I don't want to be a part of this church anymore. And is there anything that you think might bring them back? And sometimes that question is a little harder because we've never actually asked the question. But hold that person in your head so that it's real for you. Obviously, for confidential, don't talk. Well, it's Bishop. No, don't talk about names. But just who is that person? Share with just one or two other people. We don't have time to make it a huge group. One or two other people. What caused them to leave? And do you think there's anything that would make them come back? 1, 2, 3, ready, go. How do we right this ship? Now, again, personal biases here. I go to a lot of these same conferences. I know a lot of the same authors and books that you read, and everybody talking about we need to do this, we need to do that. And as if there's do this or do that, right? Rich's opinion, maybe Rich is wrong. Rich's opinion is, when did the Catholic Church become an either or? I thought we were both and. And we tend to be both and in a lot of things, right? And so I think we have to really study this and really understand the problem and stop pointing fingers at my way or your way or who's right or who's wrong. And we spend a ton of time, we actually spend a lot of books trying to convince everybody else that my way is the right way, as opposed to let's take a step back for a second and understand. And I've had a conversation with a couple people as to why they do that, some who have written some of these books. And they said because it's very overwhelming. And I agree with that. I agree with that statement. It's very overwhelming when you think about what we would actually have to do to fix this challenge. And then I just sit back and say, but isn't that part of the spiritual journey? I mean, don't we think that the disciples were pretty overwhelmed several times too? Like when they were sitting in that upper room and they thought about what was on the other side of that door and what it meant to really unlock that door. And it wasn't just because a couple of the people inside that room were starting to smell. It was because of what was on the other side. And I mean, I can't even fathom that daunting task. And sometimes we forget who's in the boat with us. Right? We don't individually have to have all the right answers. We just collectively have to have the right answers. And sometimes we lose focus there. Here's what I mean by that. When we're coaching parishes, we ask them there's 3 questions every single year you and your staff should be asking yourselves. When you go back on Tuesday, this is one of those things you could easily do. And it's a 0 budget item. Woo! Do you have the right structure? Do you have the right process? Do you have the right skills? Now, what do I mean by that? By the way, I am more than happy to share any of these PowerPoints with you. We're all on the same team last I checked. So if that's helpful. If you don't want it, that's fine too. Do we have the right structure? So when we talked about, remember we had people standing, we were talking about, well, when we communicate to people, we communicate to them in church. That's a structure, right? That's a way of doing something. When we have Wednesday night religious ed, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock sessions, that's a structure. It's a man-made structure that's the best time to do it. Or when we have structures like RCIA sign-up is in September. Now, the fact that other people may want to come in December, well, you're going to have to wait till next September. By the way, they won't. And that's a structure, correct? Right? So that's what we're defining by structure. Now, then the second question is, once you have the right structures that match the people that you're trying to reach, what are we doing inside of those structures to be effective? That's the process, right? So once I figure out that Wednesday at 4 o'clock is the right structure to operate in, then I have to say, what are we doing at 4 o'clock on Wednesday night that is actually producing what it is that we're trying to produce? That's the process. And as I look at the process that is necessary to complete the structure that is necessary to build the kingdom, I have to then say, well, what kind of skills are going to be required? It doesn't mean you personally, but what kind of skills do we need to train and do whatever it is that we're doing at that particular time within the structure that is going to reach the people, that is going to multiply the kingdom, that is going to grow this church, right? And there's 3 questions that you have to ask every single year. Now, this time of the year when we're doing budgets and calendars, have to take some truth serum. Most of us are taking last year's calendar, and we've already carbon copied 85% of it onto next year, except just change the dates, right? The senior citizen Christmas dinner is going to be the 3rd Saturday in December because that's when it always is, right? And we know when religious said, we know when 85-90% of your calendar is the exact same. But because it's the new evangelization, you're going to modernize parish faith. This year we're going to do a luau. Watch out. They're all going to come a-running, right? It's the Irish side of me comes out every now and again. Do we have the courage? Now this is where the leaders come in. This is where you come in. Lots of people have read all these books, right? Like the Rebuilds of the World and the Divine Renovations of the World, and they're all fabulous books. I read them too. I'm good friends with these people. They're great stuff. What people skip in those books is when Father Michael White at Nativity Parish in Baltimore, and some people like his style, some don't. What I'm saying, you're actually looking at the wrong thing. Do you understand that when they decided, and it worked for them, I don't think it would work for every person, but it works for them. Do you understand that part of that challenge in growing that church was a deliberate intent to be broken and to be persecuted so that that culture could be disrupted so that it could actually grow again? And do you realize the cost of changing the culture of the parish? And that's where most people hesitate. I say that as someone who was at a parish in Chicago that did that. We did it 25 years ago. We were a 1,300 household parish, and 9 years later we were a 6,700 household parish. But there was persecution in between because everybody said we're screwing up the church. And Father Tony, who was our pastor, and I, who is this rebellious little youth minister, we had to make so many trips to the chancery's office that we actually had the lights timed to know which one. We were there because that's what we do. We write letters to the bishop. We won't come in dialogue because we don't do those things. So we're going to write to the chancery, and because we were screwing up the church. And the reality is we were screwing up people's comfort level. I'm going to love you enough to tell you the truth that we could keep having these meetings. We can keep gathering, sharing ideas, and there's a lot of great ones out there. If you're unwilling to do that part, nothing's going to change. And is that not what the Eucharist actually is? We don't go get Eucharist. We become Eucharist. And we have to be willing to be broken individually and as a parish so that the resurrection can come. And most parishes don't want to do that. Most leaders, most staff don't want to do that because some people are going to get mad at us. And what if they take their money, and what if they go? And they're holding us hostage to a model that we know in our head does not work, but we are so afraid to do something different. Truth or not truth? Truth or not truth?
Truth.
It's tough. And I can say that as someone who's walked the journey and who had people at their door yelling and screaming and talking to my children about the bad dad that I was, in the name of Jesus, of course. I get it. And I would still do it all over again because it was worth it. Because the kingdom was multiplied and people came to know the Lord because of it. Did it stink? Heck, yes. Did Father Tony, myself, and several other staff come that close to our brink of being broken? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would do it again. I've helped 4 other parishes do it. I would do it again, and every single time there's breakthrough. So when you read those books, when you read The Divine Renovation, Father James Mallon did the same thing. Don't skip that part. And by the way, that's not a money issue. That's not a vocation issue. That's not a building issue. That's a spiritual issue. We don't have a money problem in the church. We have a spiritual problem in the church. Because spiritually convicted people are willing to walk through that valley of darkness for the greater glory of what comes beyond. You have to ask these 3 questions, and then you have to be willing to do something about it. And I can't do that for you, and neither can any book. That's a personal conviction that you and your staff have to have. And that starts with being spiritually grounded and connected as individuals, because you will be persecuted, no different than the early disciples. And the worst part is, you're going to be persecuted by your own people. That's the worst part of it. Every year, ask these 3 questions. Why? Here's why. I'm just using in a different frame of a typical parish, but I want to show you what I mean by structured questions. So it's hard to do in a diagram, and I'm not an artsy person, so bear with me, I'll try to explain it. Assuming this is on and I get my little radar beam here to show up like this. Well, maybe not. Is it there? There it is. All right, in the light, it's going to lose it. The under 0, 5, 8, 17, 12, those are ages. So I want to show you the lifespan of how we're interacting currently in our structure as a parish with our people. Not so we always are looking through our eyes. We have to look through their eyes, right? So I want to reflect back to you their experience of interacting with St. Mary's Parish. Okay? A baby is born, and obviously we look at the whole swath. We have all these parishioners, and there's babies. These babies are born. The baby comes to us. We take the parent, we put the parent into a class, a baptism class, right? To teach them the theology of baptism. It's great. Is that all that a parent needs in this stage? Okay, now go to become a parent. Bad room to be talking about this one. But you all know what it's like to be a parent. You all have. When I'm a parent, what goes through my head when especially my first child? What's going through my head? I don't know what I'm doing. You're absolutely right. Truth serum here. So when we had our oldest, Christopher, and all our boys were big boys. If you didn't notice, they came out that way. Not that size, but that'd be weird. But when Christopher was born, we went in and he had to be delivered early because he had stopped kicking. And my wife woke me up at 5 o'clock in the morning and said, I haven't heard the baby or felt the baby kicking in quite a while. Idiot guy, never done this before. I'm the youngest of 4, all boys, no sisters, no knowledge of this. But what I would later learn is I'm a normal first parent. My response was, maybe the baby's sleeping. They do that, don't they? And she said, it's something different. Okay, call the doctor. Called the doctor. The doctor said, come on in. Because it had been 8 hours. And apparently they don't sleep that long in the womb, I guess. So we go into the doctor. Long story short, he wasn't moving because the cord was wrapped around his head a couple different times. So we had he came out and he was fine. Everything was great. But we came out and all I thought was, oh my goodness. When she was starting to dilate for the baby, she was asleep. They'd given her an epidural. My response, this is what's going through my head. What if she sleeps through it? I said that to the nurse. And she said, honey, pretty sure it's not going to happen. Why don't you go get something to eat? But I knew that if I would have thought if it would, but I was nervous, I was scared. And when the baby was born, it suddenly, this is real. And I'm responsible for you, and there ain't no manual for every single possible question that's going to come. That's what's going through my head. Was part of it, how do I raise this child in the faith? Absolutely. Which is its own challenge, right? But a bigger part
was just, what does it mean to be a parent? Remember when we said that the documents all talk about apprenticing people for life? Yeah, we skip that in most baptismal preps, don't we? We don't accompany our parents to be parents. We get them registered for a class so that they can be baptized. It's not a relational thing, right? And that's assuming you could actually take it back a step and say, well, maybe the marriage came first, which we'll come back around to this, but when they come, if they're coming, we know those numbers are dropping too, but when they come, we abandon them after marriage. Don't we do the same thing for marriage? What's the first thing on their mind? Yes, I want them to know theologically, but that's only a part of the equation. They have to learn what it means to be in a sacramental marriage. They have to learn what it means to be in a relationship, not a television version of a relationship. And today it's getting even harder because now they're looking at these goofy things all the time. Where does the church teach that? Most parishes, they don't. So why do they, out of the gate, look at us as being totally irrelevant to the rest of life? It's not because they're bad people. It's because we've created structures and systems that cause that. We get them in, we have a baby. We're going to have no contact with those individuals until they're 4 or 5 years old or whatever age you have when you come back around again. And we're going to send you a letter, because gosh knows that's a great way to inspire people. We're going to send you a letter to sign up for the class. If you are a good parent, you'd be signing up for this class. Right? 50% of our people have already left. Now, in any other line of work, if you knew the first major intersection where you were losing 50% of your customers and you did nothing about it, what would happen to you? You'd be fired. And yet we just keep doing, our calendars are going to come out, we're going to do baptismal prep all over. Now, don't mishear me. I'm not saying don't cover theology. What I am absolutely blatantly saying is it's incomplete. And the time they need your help is not before, it's after. Because in addition to the major do you know what the number one cause of divorce is? Money. By a long shot, by the way. It's not adultery, it's money. Usually one person's spending it and the other doesn't like it, or they're both spending it and there's nothing left over. And do you know what initiates that thrust towards marriage statistically more than any other thing? Or towards divorce? Children. Because what's going on the human side of it, not the theological side of it, the human side of it is, we used to just be the two of us and we used to have time together for just the two of us, and I was just starting to figure that out and I'm not even sure I did, and now all of a sudden all the attention's on the kid, and it's not that that's a bad thing, but now there's a grief, there's a loss that's going on and I don't know what to do with it, and I don't even know where to go with that. See what I'm saying? What happened to we accompany people through life? Right? And then people are, well, how would we do that? I don't know. Where in our church? Where in our church would we find people who've been married for a while? Our parent. Wait, man, I don't know where I'm sure we could come up with finding parents somewhere. Do you see what I'm saying? Maybe God has provided, we just are not using it effectively. Who's accompanying these young couples? Because that's the point right there. That's the point of contact. You cannot let them off your radar. And if you could slow it down there, it will affect the rest of parish life. Again, I don't know what you do at your local parish, but Tuesday you could start looking at that question. You can do that, and there's a zero budget item on it. Right? Then we get them to First Communion. We're going to see in third grade another, on average, 20% drop off. Some people say it's more, but it's 20% we'll use. And when we're forming them, remember back to that last one about how we're supposed to form in the RCIA model? 85% of what we're teaching them is content and only 15% application, right? The church, it's all about apprenticing people. Then we're going to get them, and I just picked the age of 17. The reality is, you know this already, every diocese around the country has a different age of confirmation, so I just had to pick one. But if yours is 13, if you're 15, I actually didn't ask what age your confirmation is, but whatever it is, you get them confirmed, you still know the result is basically the same, right? You're going to confirm a lot of those kids and you're never going to see them again. And we just assume that that has to be our reality. If you work for my company and you assume that we can't do something, I'd fire you. I'm just letting you know that. Find a solution, man. And part of the solution is don't let them off the radar and look at how you're forming them. If you're only forming them in the head and not in practice, and they don't understand, and by the way, you've separated them from the adult community, and then at confirmation say, now you can take your place in the adult community, and they're saying, what adult community? I've never even met any of the adult community. Is it their fault or our fault? That's structure. That's a structure issue, right? If you want young people to take their rightful place in the church, why isn't it required before they're confirmed that they're attending some of the major ministries? Don't give them a sheet that says, hey, would you like to be a lector? They don't even know what a lector is, right? What if they would shadow and be apprenticed by a lector at Mass? What if they had to come and instead of reading about liturgy, what if class took place on Sunday at Mass and some of the kids are going to partner up with the sacristan and learn what a sacristan does by doing it? What if they would go to a finance council meeting and learn about what is talked about in finances? Because some of those kids like math. I'm not asking you to have these kids balance your checkbook. What I am doing is don't allow it to be a secret. I've always wondered, we send all these kids away to do all these mission trips, and they come back and they're fired up in the summer, or these summer trips. They're awesome. It's great. I've been on hundreds of them. They're awesome. And they work. Here's the best question. How come before they're confirmed we don't require people to go and be a missionary before being confirmed to be a missionary disciple? Why is it only for the kids who are willing to do a car wash? If we know that they work, why do we keep that from kids and not just build that into formation? Because that's the way we've always done it. That's a structure. See, we could change those things. Well, it would cost a fortune. Maybe, but if you go to your parish, I've done this, so that's why I know it works. You go to your parish and you say, from here on out, here's why. Every one of our kids are going to learn what it means to be a missionary. We're getting rid of these goofball 10-hour service things that we know half the parents are making up anyway. And these kids are going to go out and they're going to go be a missionary for a week. We're going to send them out as missionaries. They're going to go do these week-long trips. And they're going to work side by side and they're going to process. We're going to need some chaperones to come with us. And we want this parish to support that because the evidence, the data supports that it actually works. You trying to tell me that your parish isn't going to support that? Because they know what's been happening after they're confirmed. Your parish wants to know what you're going to do about it. They're sick and tired of seeing the kids leave. And by the way, if you know anything about leveraging power, if you're going to bring 100 kids to a mission trip, you absolutely ask for a discount. Right? Because it's a business. Don't kid yourself. Right? That's called negotiating. Well, your competition is willing to give me some. Well, we'll come down in price. And yeah, of course you will. And then after they're confirmed, we abandon them again until marriage, right? And what do we do for marriage? We stick them in a class. We don't apprentice them at all into this new journey called marriage and what it means to not just be sacramentally married, but live a sacramental marriage. Those are not the same thing, right? That's a structure. See, you can work on that with your teams. You can ask some of those. That's the conversation that should be taking place in your staff meetings. That's the kind of stuff you should be saying. Come on, between all of us in this room, we got to come up with a better way to do it. And every idea is a great idea. I'm not saying we're going to do everything, but let's see what we come up with. And let's dialogue, let's disagree, let's go back and forth. That's called discernment. The church has used that tool for years to figure out its true wisdom. So that we don't have an adult church that takes care of itself. People were so confused by Pope Francis's words in The Joy of the Gospel when he said that a church that only is consumed by taking care of itself is a church that was sick. Ooh, some people didn't like that. They didn't understand what he meant. What he meant was the 25%, not because you're bad people, but that just talk about we got to keep doing the same thing, and you're ignoring these people out here because you just want more money because you're so focused on doing the same thing. That's what he meant by a church that's consumed by itself. He's not saying you're bad people. He's just saying, let's try something different. Let's understand that we have opportunities before us. That if we look at the structure and the way that we're setting things up, who's holding all these ministries? Who's holding the 6 women's Bible studies that all meet at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning? Because that's a great time for all the women to meet. Who's holding all these Bible studies accountable to say, look, you 9, 10 people, first of all, you've been meeting for 6 years, and praise the Lord that you're meeting, and it's wonderful and it's great, but has it ever occurred to any of you that maybe you 3 should break off and start one on Saturday morning, and you 3 should break off and start one on Tuesday night, and you 3 should break off and we'll start one on Monday? Why? So that we can reach more people. We know the model, we know what we're doing. We can all still actually read the same thing so that all of our groups are focused on the same thing, but who's challenging these people to fraction themselves? There's a word we use, right? To fraction themselves, be broken, to become what we receive, so that it's not about your personal comfort, so that more people can come to understand, in one case, Bible study. See, that's how you multiply the mission. But if nobody ever has that conversation with any of these existing ministers, that's what Pope Francis means by a church that's consumed by maintenance. I heard someone over here talk about this maintenance mission thing. Right? I love it. I do a parish mission on that. And we've talked about that for you. What does that actually mean? That's what it means. That's literally what it looks like. And this is a different way of behaving. A different way of behaving is saying, we're going to have an answer for that. And maybe we have to do some more apprenticing in the way that we're teaching. Maybe these kids need to be living labs. Maybe instead of telling the kids they should pray, maybe we should let them practice knowing they're going to screw up a few times. But isn't that how you learn? Right? Isn't that how you learn? When we look at the youth ministry model, we're not going to have time to get into it here today. These summer mission trips are awesome. And let me pull that slide up. I want to show you something. It's not rocket science. I want to show you how you actually do this. And I have this, you can take it home with you if you want. I drew this up because I'm a teacher and you got to get everything down to one page. If you can't get to one page, nobody's going to remember it. All of our documents all speak of this one cycle. This is just a pretty picture way of doing it. All the same thing. None of this is original material here. Some point someone introduces you to the faith, you know that, right? First stages of the RCIA, we got that covered. If the invitation stops at any point as you go towards the orange arrow, if at any point the invitation stops, that seed dies in the ground, biblically speaking, right? Isn't that what that's all about, right? For many of us, the invitation is a piece of paper. It's a letter in the mail, hoping that they come. Is that the best way that we could do that? What's a better way to invite people? Face-to-face, right? So if face-to-face is a better one, maybe when we go back and start having conversations about that orange arrow, how we do invitation, maybe that's all we work on this year. Maybe this year all we're going to work on is all the points of introduction and invitation, and if that's all we work on this year, that could be a successful year, right? And how do we build systems to have more face-to-face invitations and less paper, which by the way is cheaper too, better for your budget. But we get them in and we get the seed planted, right? We get them into class to learn about whatever. And this could be Bible study, it could be for kids, it could be for adults, right? And eventually the invitation keeps going because at some point, they have to stop doing church and become church. And so the apprenticing model becomes critical. Again, this is all church document stuff just in one little image. None of this is original. But they have to do it. This is the mission trip. This is why mission trips work. They go because for the first time what they've done and what they've learned have matched up and they enjoy it, they experience it, but they're so young they don't have the language, they don't know what to do about it. So this is why they come back and they're, oh my God, it was great, we slept on a hard floor and took a cold shower. You should come. But here's what's happened. Here's what's happened, just so you understand. It's not, I can't tell you the number of churches I've been to like, oh, we just love those kids. We should just support those kids. You have no idea what's going on, do you, when you make those statements? You have no idea theologically and developmentally what has just taken place, why they come back. I mean, I'm all for the kids and being great. Let's do the car washes and support and hand them a few bucks and whatever too. But this isn't for show. We're not doing this for fun. I'm trying to produce something. I'm trying to get that young person to look like something. I'm trying to get that young person to become something. And if it's only about fun, then we're wasting our money. When they come through these experiences, do you understand that they have just started to turn, they're starting to own it. But they're not done. There's a whole center circle. So here's the typical youth ministry problem. We get them on these mission trips, they come back, they're all fired up, and then the kids who were there come back on Sunday and do the same thing all over again. Because it's always on Sunday night, and there's only one size fits all because everybody apparently is at the same development level. That's not true. Why do juniors and seniors fall off the radar of youth ministry? It's simple. They're ready for a level 2, and you're keeping them on level 1 because you don't even have a level 2. By the way, this is adults as well. Why do adults get stuck and stay at Bible study and never move beyond that? Because we only have one level. When Sherry Waddell writes in her book, Forming Intentional Disciples, about the different levels of spiritual growth, and some are seekers and right, and all this different, if you've read this book, that's what she's talking about. But yet our structures are designed in most parishes to be one size fits all. And people get frustrated. When they get frustrated, they leave. As opposed to, what if we would design them out of the gate when we do our budgets and calendars? We need a level 2. So that now I've come through it, it's great. I'm ready for something different, but I'll invite someone else to that first one. So here's how we used to do that in youth ministry. I'm going to use one example just so you can get it in your head. In youth ministry, no kid ever went to the same experience twice. Ever. So we would have 4 or 5 different summer things going on at the same time. And you didn't get to go because you thought it was cool. No. So we always started with mission trips because mission trips are an easy, low risk. Most people like them because it's physical work and they like getting outside. And let's be honest, the bus trip is half of it. Right? So we go, their eyes are open. What I've done is level 1, because our goal for the mission trip was not a mission trip. That was the first difference between our parish and other parishes. When we grew to 6,500 people and our youth ministry went from 3 kids to 500, our goal for that mission trip was to let you know that you have something to offer that you can change the world. And all of our follow-up for the individuals who were on the mission trip was surrounding that. You have the ability to affect people's lives. That was our goal. And that was the outcome. That's what I was seeking in sending those kids to that mission trip. Yes, there's a lot of other positives that come out of it. But now the second summer, you're not going on the mission trip. I'm going to send you to something different. We had a couple different varieties based upon the kids and their interests, but let's just say, I'm going to try to pick things that are popular, and I don't know what you all in this diocese do. But say second summer, I'm going to send you to like a Steubenville conference, let's say. Why? I'm not sending you to a Steubenville conference because it's cool. Okay? I don't care what kind of music they have at the Steubenville conference. And I say that knowing all those people are my friends. True, they really are, right? But I don't care. That's not why I'm sending you to Steubenville or anything like that. I'm sending you to Steubenville because now in your spiritual development, it's time to bring it from generalities, and this year we're going to start honing in a little bit. I want you to start understanding that yes, you have the ability and there's some cool things, and that Catholic social teaching is about understanding and separating from the self, and then it's about others. That was phase 1. But now I want you to understand that God is the one who's trying to animate your life. And let's bring that in a little bit, and let's understand and do some understanding how God is working in your life. That's my goal for you for year 2. That's why you're going on the Steubenville conference. Because I want the Lord to become real to you. Because at some point, it's not about just being nice. It's about transformation internally, is it not? Right? But then level 3, the third summer, we would send them to something like, say, ND Vision, Notre Dame Vision, which is a leadership camp run by the students. Why? Because I'm not interested in you going back to Steubenville so you can go see all your friends. Because I'm trying to get you to look like something. The parish is investing in you so that you can be connected to this community. And I'm trying to develop skills in you. So the third year, I'm going to send you to something like ND Vision so that you can learn how to be a leader and a peer leader and be in your school. Because part of what they do in those breakouts led by the students, which are very effective, is they're going to teach you in a school environment how to walk up and engage with different students. They're going to cover that. That's a skill I want you to learn. I'm sure you had a great time at the Steubenville conference. I'm sure you had a great time at the mission trip. But you're done with that. It's time to move on. Right? And then the fourth year, I might send you to something like St. Meinrad Seminary that offers one bread, one cup, which is liturgical leadership and liturgical. I'm going to train you to be a sacristan and all that. So why? Because it's time for you to start taking your rightful place in leadership in this community. And I'm developing that skill. And you see where I'm going with this? See, that's the structure. We designed a structure to make sure that people could do that. Make sense? Does it help? We need a break?